for those listening, we're gonna be like, "Is Nick gonna say it? Are they level?" They are not. They're nowhere close.
All right, Chelsea fans, welcome back to another episode of the London is Blue podcast. As always, your host, Brandon, Joe, my co-host, Nick and Dan. And gentlemen, this is the Aston Villa FA Cup match review. But unfortunately, Dan, I have to clarify leg one.
That's right. We get the benefit of a replay, which if you don't know, a replay is dumb. Very, very dumb, Nick.
Please be kind, rewind. You remember those days?
I remember that movie. Yeah, it's not the most ideal situation. I think we can all admit that, especially because I think as we'll go through, Chelsea had plenty of opportunities to get this done in regular time in the first leg. But, you know, again, we talked about Middlesbrough, Villa, Liverpool, chance to build momentum, right? And I think there is still a really, really good chance to build momentum, even if it has to go a little bit longer than we anticipated.
Well, like if there's one thing us fans want, it's more football, and we got it. But hey, we're going to jump into breaking it all down. But before we get into it, we got to know what you, the listeners out there, are thinking. And we do that with our 3-word match review, aka in case you missed it, Dan, what did we get from the people?
Nicholas with running on Petro. You had Tyson with the How's Villa fourth. Golden Iris with the I missed nothing. That's right. You could use this wonderful pod summary, and maybe it's just as good as watching the entire match. You had Def Juck's Daddy with a brilliant, very vanilla Villa. Southeast Blues with the warm-up injuries? Because that's right, injuries during warm-up now. Connor with subs, subvert, flow, and then Adam with reset, Liverpool, repeat.
I was a huge fan of Nick's running on Petro. Well played on that one.
Sure, of course you are.
Understandable. I put can't score, defend, because it's two sides of this game. So thank God we didn't concede and just blow it right at the end there. But Nick, what about you?
It's a cup competition, so my 3-word match review is a puncher's chance.
And Dan?
Look, I hate to do this because I don't want to inflate Brandon's ego, but I had to put keepers on display. This was a day of goalkeeping. Both goalkeepers were great.
Oh, I got it. I got a new one. Keepers gonna keep. That's what we do.
Keepers keep keeping.
Keep keeping. All right. Well, hey, look, before we get into all this, Dan, we do want to say thank you to the amazing people and give you all easy ways to get more involved with us, the podcast you love.
Look, you know, we love Apple and Spotify 5-star reviews. It warms our heart, makes us feel good. It's a great way for you to have to do nothing other than drag that little finger across the screen and leave it on the 5. You can also hit the subscribe icon on YouTube, help join our channel there. You can like and comment on the videos and hit the bell icon to get notified. That helps the podcast too. You can sign up for our free weekly newsletter. Sam does it every single week, except for an upcoming week where I'm going to write it again. Sorry in advance for that. And then we have our wonderful Discord community. There's a free and paid variant to that, so you can join up and sign up and have some fun in the conversation there too.
Awesome ways to hang out with us. But look, let's jump into the match now. It was Aston Villa this past Friday, the 26th of January. A bit weird for that one, but it was in the FA Cup at Stamford Bridge. In case you missed it, Chelsea 0, Aston Villa 0. No goals in this one. So instead, let's just run into the lineup, Dan. How did Poch line this one up? Obviously, the forced injury early on in warm-ups like we talked about.
Yeah, so I mean, as we've mentioned already, it was Petrovic between the sticks. Alfie Gilchrist comes in for Levi Colwell, who again was injured during warmups, though it doesn't seem like it is a huge issue, according to the post-match press conference, which is a good bit of news. Axel Disasi and Thiago Silva, along with Benoit Badiashile, made up your back four. It was Enzo, Moises Caicedo, and Conor Gallagher as your midfield trio, and then you had Nani Madueke, Cole Palmer, and Raheem Sterling as your attack up top. It was Ben Chilwell who was first off the bench, who came in and plays for Gilchrist, and then you saw Mykhailo Mudryk and Armando Broja come in for Madueke and Sterling. but it wasn't enough to get the job done. And Carney Chukwuemeka comes in for a couple of applause minutes or an opportunity to get jeered by the away supporters for having the audacity to leave Villa for Chelsea. I know, crazy.
Yeah, bold claims there from him, no doubt. Some of the stats. So XG philosophy giving us the XG saying 0.89 to 1.17. Villa with the edge on that, unfortunately. But we had 57% possession. We had 10 shots, 4 on target. Villa had 13 shots with 5 on target. From there, we had 12 fouls to their 8, 1 caution apiece. We created 1 big chance, and we missed it. Same to Villa, 1 apiece. And then lastly, goalkeeper saves. Dorde with 5 saves. Emi Martinez with 5 as well. So pretty level on the day with everything. But Nick, what about your NPET shithouse moment of the match?
Yeah, it was pretty early on. I think it was on a breakaway. Thiago Silva needlessly clattered John McGinn. Told him to fuck off, and then got up and told the referee very innocently, like, me? How dare I? Yeah, it was pretty obvious foul, but I appreciated the acting that went along with it. Frankly, it was good.
If you're
Like
gonna
he was probably just asking for his protein shake recipe or something. I mean, that.
if you're gonna clatter someone, it might as well be John McGinn, right? I mean, come on.
Yeah, it felt right. It felt right.
All right, we're going to take our first ad break. When we get back, jumping into the match, thank you to the sponsors, and we'll be right back. All right, so in this one, we actually had to reverse our fortunes against Villa, which is a bit of a new trend. The other trend is we didn't score. So a couple things for us to break down here is that, Nick, Chelsea have not beaten Aston Villa since the 16th of October in 2022. Overall, head-to-head, we're dominant, right? But for whatever reason, we have lost our last 3 matches against Villa.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting matchup for us now because Villa are kind of the team that Chelsea used to be, really tough to play against. A lot of big physical characters across the squad, some really talented technical players in their team now as well. Obviously flying in the league, but I wouldn't say that they are overly complicated to break down. I think it's just whether or not they stay together as a unit. And so, if you think about the game back in October, there's a 1-0 game. We didn't play that well on the day. They didn't really play that well either, but they gutted it out. I think that's kind of been their season this year. They're just a little bit better than whoever they're playing against on the day, not overly dominant. But that's a problem for Chelsea to solve. And I think in this match, the approach was very obvious from go. Chelsea were going to dominate. They were going to dominate the ball. They were going to play with aggression. We saw what that high press did against Middlesbrough that resulted in a lot of goals for us. And I think Poch basically hit the NOS button on the game plan and was like, hey, we need to go even faster. We need to press even higher. We need to make them make mistakes because if they beat themselves, we have a really great chance to beat them. And that, to me, is a much different approach than what we did in October, where it was almost like we were waiting for ourselves to make a mistake, right? We were like too timid on the ball, too slow in possession, too slow in transition. This was like a whole different deal. And outside of the finishing, which I know we will talk about, I thought that Chelsea played relatively well on the day, especially having played 3 days prior when Villa had the entire week and a half of rest. So, I know I'm not like the ever optimist on the show, but I thought given those scenarios and all the context, Chelsea played relatively well.
It was one thing I think that came to light was that we had enough steam to go really hard in the first half. And the second half of this game was a completely different story. I mean, you think about looking at just we had 68% of possession of the ball in the first half. That flips to only having 46% of possession in the second half. We mustered 6 of our total shots and 4 on target in the first half. You flip that over to the second half, we had 4 total shots, 0 on target. I mean, we just lacked some of the intensity in the second half to be able to compete the same way. I mean, Villa, to your point, Nick, were there and played, I think, the way that we anticipated they would, attacking on the wings, stuffing the center to try to make it difficult for the ball to move forward. I think there was some really slick passing on the day initially. There was some good interchange, particularly when you think about the fact that we had Benoit Badiashile and Alfie Gilchrist as your fullbacks on the day. I mean, that alone, I think, provided a unique look. They definitely are maybe not, again, as they're not a Malo Gusto. They're not necessarily a fully fit Ben Chilwell in that regard. And so we maybe struggled a little bit there. But, I think in general, we didn't score, Brandon, which was, I think, the unique thing, because we do score. It's just that we maybe don't necessarily do it as often as people think when you look at the entirety of the season.
Right. So that is one thing that I personally wanted to kind of dial in a little bit, was the fact that we've actually done a good job of getting at least one goal in the majority of our matches. So we've only failed to score 7 times in all competitions, which is roughly 25% of our matches. I have not done the homework to see if that is high, low, average. So if that strikes you as a really interesting stat, listener, please follow up. We'd love to know where that stands. So again, 29 total matches. It was a bit of a rough September. So we lost 0-1 to Forest, 0-0 to Bournemouth was a draw, and we lost to Villa, and that was our September. So there was 3 matches out of probably 4 where we didn't score. Since then, we lost 2-0 to Brentford, 2-0 to Everton. That was December. Obviously, Boro in the Cup, and now Villa is a draw. So, Nick, kind of with that in perspective, I think it is a bit of a surprise now that we didn't score at all, but Poch had to make changes in attack again, and I think that is part of the issue.
Yeah, I mean, you look at I was actually surprised the XG was as low for each team as it was, but like you look at the chances that both teams had to score in this game, particularly Chelsea. Madueke chance early, Palmer chance early, Palmer chance late, a few more sprinkled in there after some really good runs. I think for me, Chelsea did tire out. There's no doubt, but the last Palmer chance was late in the second half. Off of the Emi Martinez deflected goal kick, right? So it's like I look at this as just a bad day at the finishing office more than anything else, and I also, just look at the defense being, very much a makeshift unit right now, very much on the medical table across the board, putting in a relatively decent shift against an offense that we know can score goals in transition. I mean, I don't remember Ollie Watkins really touching the ball that much for them, and that's, I think, a huge credit to the defense. So, do I think that Madueke probably should have had a brace? Of course. Should Cole Palmer and his finishing ability that we've seen on display, 20 goal contributions this year, should have had a brace, an easy one that was like gifted to him? Yeah. Is there another day where Chelsea win this game 4-2 and it's a huge momentum shift, not only for this competition, for the league? Absolutely. I don't think Villa fans could even complain about that result either, just to be candid. I mean, the chances were that clear. But you also didn't give away anything either. And so now it's all to play for. And Chelsea are going to have to do something that they have not really done this year, and that's go beat a big team on the road, and we'll see how Villa are holding up. It's not as if they're the deepest squad in the world.
Dan, I thought it was interesting. This almost played out the exact same way as the Middlesbrough, minus the concession of the goal, right? Do you think that Poch sets his teams up to be a little, I don't know, like what is it about first legs with this Chelsea team where we don't take our chances and end up finding ourselves in a second leg? Is it just coincidence that it happened in this round? Because obviously we've beaten other teams in the cup competitions up to this point, but it seems like this is a familiar setting all of a sudden.
I would say that I don't necessarily believe that it's a difference between how this side sets up for any particular type of tournament. Whether I think this was approached like a match, like any other match. The issue is that there were less days of rest in between the prior match and this match. I think that there were players unavailable that you would have wanted to feature. I mean, Levi Colwell would have been in this match, and Alfred Gilchrist probably would have come off the bench if not for the injury warm up. You have the fact that Nico Jackson is still on international duty. He would have played in this match. Christopher Nkunku is not yet healthy again, so he wasn't available for this. And so as much as we want to go after Poch for the lineup, which I think I didn't have necessarily a concern about, maybe the subs are where you could point out that maybe they didn't come early enough, because if you look at where the momentum was, where you look at the fact that it really became Villa's game in that last 30 minutes or so, maybe that's where you could point at being a problem. But it felt like actually both managers were pretty pragmatic about this one. Even some of the late subs by Emery were effectively like hey, like we're gonna try to see this one. When Zanilo comes on, you're like, yeah, we're trying to see this out. Like, this is gonna get it. We're gonna try to get this one across the line here.
Look, fair. Let's talk about those changes, right? So you had kind of mentioned it. So we'll talk about the lineup in this one. Is the fact that some of the change. So Poch had to make changes in the back line, and he had to make changes in attack. The changes in the back line felt more forced, whereas the attack, choosing the personnel based on who's healthy there. Benoit came in as center back, but Levi got injured in warm up, like we talked about. It forced him to left back, and that meant Alfred Gilchrist got to start, and he went at right back. So if you look at that, Nick, and the defenders, we've obviously had a ton of kind of movement around that back line. But like, there's not a lot of options yet again for Poch to kind of change. I mean, it was good to get Benoit in and get him some minutes, but also you didn't really have any other options to play people. We're out of wing backs.
Yeah, I mean, you really start to look at the bench, right? And it starts to show the injury record pretty quickly. I mean, of course you have Chilwell on the bench, but that is your only senior defender on the bench. So you're playing after Levi goes out, you're playing with 4 of your 5 total defenders in your team on the field, right? So there really is no margin for error or anything like that. The other, I guess maybe Max Merrick could slot in there, but I mean that's a stretch considering he was like the last person added into the match day squad and hadn't even properly warmed up during warm-ups. I think it just shows where we are at from a defensive fragility perspective. Like, I was worried, frankly, about Benoit playing left back after not having played for another huge stretch of games, maybe 6, 7, 8 games since he last came back from injury, right? I mean, we all know how demanding left, right back are for Pochettino and his system, what it means to get up and down the field, how you have to play those positions to aid the center backs, and in this case, Thiago Silva, who isn't necessarily the most spry individual anymore. So it was a huge load on both Alfie and on Benoit. And I thought for the most part, until the subs were made, they did a really good job together. I thought they worked incredibly hard. I thought that some of the passing forward was impressive, just given the fact that neither one of them are necessarily known for passing from those specific angles. They're both center backs playing fullback, right? Which has a whole different sort of vibe and trajectory to a long crossfield ball. So given all of the changes, I was really, really pleased with that. And I actually thought that when Ben came on, he got a little bit worse, Dan, defensively. And I'm not 100% sure if that was just the shift, having to play Disasi out at right back or what, but it really, to me, kind of signaled the start of the nervy times when Chilwell came on, and that is complete opposite from the other day where he started and was, for me, the player of the match.
Yeah, he did. He did take a little time, I think, to get settled. I mean, once I think the 70th to like minute hit, that was really when I think the intensity kind of creeped up at the end. I think Villa tried to figure out, hey, if we could bridge this, we could make this happen. When we saw the two late changes in Zaniolo and Carlos for Cash and Tillemans come in, and so it felt like they were chasing what potentially could be a opportune result for them in that moment. I just don't feel like really anybody had necessarily the steam. And even when Pochettino went to try to freshen up the side, try to go at something for the last little bit of it, bringing on Mudryk, bringing on Broya, it just didn't have the impact that maybe he was looking for, we were looking for, when you're looking to try to crack a defense that hasn't, for what I would say are probably lower quality chances, even though some of the, one or two you could argue maybe would have been a, 0.25, 0.3 XG chance, like the Palmer chance kind of right in front of goal. We didn't create anything. So the changes were kind of a net negative on the day, but I also don't know, like, did you bring on Chukwuemeka earlier? Do you bring in Williams off the bench, who really hasn't had any type of senior minutes, to try to freshen things up? We've seen a little of David Washington before. Do you bring on Leo Castledine? Like, it didn't feel like a perfect situation. And so I'm struggling on one hand, where you want to potentially criticize the in-game management, but at the same time, you look at the list of people who aren't available, and I don't know how much more you can do other than convert the chances you have, which Pochettino put them in a position to make the chances happen, and we just didn't convert, right? It's the same story, Brandon, of what we've seen this season on repeat, and I think people are probably tired of hearing us talk about it. I'm tired of talking about it, but that's just who Chelsea are right now.
So sneaky bench is that there's no Marcus Bettinelli. You have two extremely young goalkeepers on the bench now with Bergstrom and Max Merrick. That, like, you now have one senior goalkeeper healthy, allegedly, unless Betts just negotiated a day off for a day off, which is really interesting. To your guys' point, Dylan Williams called up 20-year-old defender from the academy. Obviously, we got a few minutes of Leo Castledine in the Boro leg, and then David Washington, just young kids at this point. So I wonder how much game management comes into this from Poch's side. Is like, hey, just keep him in front of you. Don't stretch yourself. Don't strain yourself. Like, get out of this with an injury. I think they're happy to kind of like push this down the road a little bit, even though going to Villa Park won't be fun. But if you can kick that down to a couple weeks, based on the injury reports we're getting from Chelsea, we could be a completely different team at that point. So it is tough. We mentioned it earlier. Villa had almost 2 weeks off to prepare for this. That is a massive advantage. So I think, with all that context in mind, getting out of this without a loss, I think is probably the goal with Poch's team. Was like, don't lose, don't concede, don't lose. We'll take our chances in the second leg, and that's what we did. I mean, every senior player that was on the bench got in at some point. Like, that was the situation that we were in.
You look at the injury list again too, and I know it's in here, but Chalobah, given the injury situation, probably ends up playing again for us. Like, at some point, Disasi is going to need a break, or Silva's going to need a break. Like, he's back in full training. See if he gets back in. No idea about Malo Gusto right now. It hasn't even been on the bench the last few games. That's scary, right? So, what is Trev, your auxiliary right back, when your other two right backs are hurt for long periods? Maybe. We don't know when Cucurella is coming back. We know Reese is going to be out for a long time. We know Fofana is going to be out for a long time. We have no earthly idea about Ugochukwu, Lavia, or Nkunku right now. We know they're training. Some of them aren't. Some of them, it's a mystery. I mean, like, this is a really difficult situation to manage if you're Poch, because this is but one of 3 competitions that you are in this year. Of course, you want to win them all. But, like, at this stage, the 4th round of the FA Cup, are you making some gambles? maybe you're making some gambles in the second leg that you can just gut it over the line and get to the next stage, kind of survive in advance style. But it's a really, really tricky situation for him and for, I would guess, the players and their relationships on the pitch, that they're probably seeing someone new on their side of the field every single week.
I'd imagine we played more matches in January than almost everybody. I mean,
Yeah.
January 6th played Preston, FA Cup. Then on the 9th, 3 days later, played Middlesbrough in the EFL Cup. 4 days later, played Fulham in the league. Then you had the break.
Us in Liverpool.
Then you had the break, 10 days. Now we've done Middlesbrough on the 23rd, Villa on the 26th, 3 days later, and now we have to play Liverpool on Wednesday, which 5 days actually seems like a huge break at this point, Dan. But then you go Wednesday, Sunday, and then you get a full week off. It's been relentless. It's been a gauntlet, and we haven't had healthy players to rely on. Huge, huge issues for Poch, and I think we've come out of this about as good as possible right now.
Yeah, I look, you're still in the tournament, and that is the end net here. Is you are still in the FA Cup until the next part of the replay here, and all we really wanted to advance, but the better option from not advancing in a replay is a replay. So we will take this result and we will say, you know what, at the end of the day, couch all the things that happen, we still get an opportunity over 90 minutes, Nick, to get it done.
And I think more than that, what I said earlier, it rings true for me. Villa had 2 weeks off. Maybe they were rusty. Who knows? But I thought that Chelsea outplayed them for large stretches of this game, just having played 3 days previously. And if that's the case, and Villa get back into their normal thing, they're going to be vying for the league. They're still going to be fighting for that Champions League spot. This second leg isn't ideal for them either. It's not where they want to be. I don't think either team wants to be in this situation. But for Chelsea, I thought that we acquitted ourselves really, really well, given the workload and given the fact that they didn't have that same workload. And so I'm intrigued to see what happens in the second leg. I think we might have an advantage there.
All right, well, we're going to take our last ad break. When we get back, we're going to talk about the Clean Sheet Club and what that means to this team. So thank you to the sponsors, and we'll be right back. All right, Nick, before we kind of dive into a lot of this stuff, obviously we're going to be talking about Petrovic and what he has done. One thing to remind everybody, and I put kind of a Twitter thread out, X thread out this weekend as I was doing the script, is that Dorde was just playing in the MLS. You're probably the most connected MLS person here with Sporting KC. And I actually thought it was interesting last season. So you guys have had veteran Tim Melia for a long time, had to play the young 18-year-old for a bit. Didn't go well. Melia ended up finishing the season. But talk about goalkeeping in the MLS, because I think we kind of need to understand the level between MLS to Premier League to fully appreciate what Petrovic is doing right now.
Yeah, I wouldn't consider myself like an MLS expert, but I do watch a lot of it, with interest with KC. And I think the way that I would sum up the league and the attacking style of play is that for a long time, and it's changing, the MLS is actively getting a lot better and a lot more sophisticated as we speak, right? The talent pool is much more diversified. There's a lot better coaches in the league now than there used to be. It's leaps and bounds better than it was, but there is still a significant gap between where it is and where the Premier League is. Obviously, for those listening, we're gonna be like, "What, is Nick gonna say it? Are they level?" They are not. They're nowhere close. It's a lot easier to get a clean sheet in the MLS than it is anywhere else. While the attacks are getting better, they are still pretty direct. It's a lot of counterattacking. It's a lot of set piece stuff. There is a greater emphasis on physicality and speed in the MLS than I think maybe anywhere else, because maybe the technical level isn't as high, right? And so it's harder to break teams down. I think when you see a team last year like Columbus, who does have a lot of really technical players, who does play with Wilfred Nancy is a phenomenal coach and plays a really free-flowing style of football. Like, you can see how easily they break teams down. I would say Cincinnati falls into that. LAFC falls into that occasionally, like where you have teams that are just technically superior, right? So Jorge can position himself in a spot where he's not covering as much ground left to right, right to left, coming out for the ball, not coming out for the ball, all that sort of stuff. He's a lot tighter, right? Because the odds are that the average MLS attacker is not going to do what the average Premier League attacker can do and put it upper 90 and just ruin your whole day. Now, again, I think the MLS is getting a hell of a lot better. I'm excited to see the growth of the league because I think better football across the world is just better for everybody. But the leap that he had to make to Chelsea playing Aston Villa, given how clinical Aston Villa have been, right? You think about this. They score some of these counterattacking chances with ease, right? They make the right final ball. The shot is on target, but just out of reach, right? They do a really good job of that. It's a massive fucking departure. And so when, just to like give a little bit of context there, and that may be oversimplified for people, and there are going to be some people who are like, fuck you, Nick. MLS is way better than even you're saying, and I take that on the chin, but that's just a sample size of what we're talking about.
Yeah, and no one reasonably is going to argue we're anywhere close, and that's fine, right? We should appreciate the MLS for what it is. We don't need to get into that. With whether you said in that context, I think is important. Also, New England, they were up like in the higher ranks of the Eastern Conference, pushing for playoffs. Just so everybody knows, they ended up 5th in the conference. But they conceded 46 goals, right? And that's on the higher end of MLS when you look at this. So I'm just trying to give context that it's also not like Dorde was coming out of a team that conceded 0 goals. Like, he faced a lot of shots. He had to make a lot of saves, and they conceded quite a bit. So that's just all context coming into this. Dan, you put in here, he had some big saves, saved a 1.0 XG on the stats. So he is really stepping into a league where Nick said it, and this is the key thing here. What the attackers in the Premier League can do is so far different, and the speed at which they make the decisions to do those things is a lot faster. The jump in which he has had to go to become a viable goalkeeper in this Chelsea side in the Premier League is nothing to balk at. Matt Turner, closest example, he spent a year on the bench at Arsenal before he got in at Nottingham Forest, and that hasn't gone well, or at least perfect. So context for Dorde Petrovic, what are your thoughts in terms of him stepping up for Chelsea recently?
I think he's been great. I think he has a high level of confidence. There was a interesting thread put out by John McKenzie from Tifo and The Athletic, where he talked about over the last 3 seasons of Premier League football, 60% of goals come from one touch, and then the next 20%, so a total of 80% of all goals, happen with a 1 or 2 touch scenario. Like, there is not a lot of labor decisions. There's not a lot of moving it forward and the whole kind of what we maybe have seen previously. Like, it is shoot and go. And given that, I think the challenge of coming into the Premier League, the challenge of dropping in midseason, the challenge of not knowing you were going to be the starter with Sanchez going out injured and then needing to have Petrovic come in, deputize quickly, and become the number 1 for what we thought might be into mid-late December. Now we're into mid-late January, almost February. Sanchez doesn't show a return anytime soon. It's his job to lose. It is his job to lose. And you think about the fact that we maybe at the beginning of the season felt like maybe Sanchez wasn't going to be enough for this Chelsea side in terms of, the Brighton links, maybe a bit of a down season. But, there was kind of the hope that you were going to bank on him returning to form. And Petrovic, I think, has made it extremely difficult for Pochettino to do anything other than ride with Big George for the foreseeable future of this season, given his performances. I mean, you put in his clean sheet percentages and everything in here, Brandon, in the script. But, I mean, he, in 10 games, right? So Sanchez, 19 games, 10 starts from Petrovic. Petrovic has 4 clean sheets in his 10 starts, and then you have 19 starts from Sanchez. He has 5. So likely within and this is like, I think all competitions, within short order, like he is going to, with just over half of that match play time, likely have 5 clean sheets and potentially more by the time he gets closer to 20. So I think that's a really impressive thing. I mean, part of that is on the defense, and the defense has had some improvements between earlier parts of the season and now. So I don't discount that part of it, but he has come up with some pretty strong individual saves, at least 1 or 2 over the last few matches. And that's all you want. That is all you want, is him to show up in the couple of moments when the game might be on the line to manufacture a fingertip save or a low right block. I mean, he kind of was getting it done, Nick.
More than that, though, I would say this, Brandon. He's only given up more than 1 goal twice, at Wolves Christmas Eve, at Luton on December 30th. The rest of the time, it's either been 0 or 1. Chelsea can overcome 0 or 1. I think we struggle overcoming 2. Right? We got a little fortunate in that Luton game, if you rewind your brain back a little bit, right? We couldn't overcome 2 at Wolves. So more than anything, I think he's keeping us in the game. Like, he's allowing Chelsea to get the attack going. And a lot of these games we have been more dominant. We have scored goals. We have, I think, played much better football over the last 2 months than we did the previous 3. So it's just like, are we giving ourselves a chance more than anything?
100%, right? One thing that I think really stands out to give context is at one point, Sanchez and Chelsea's defense in like late fall were being scouted by FPL players. And why it's important to be aware about that is like, there's no emotion in fantasy Premier League. It's pure data driven. Sanchez was putting up clean sheets and we were getting some results kind of in that October, November timeframe. What I would say the biggest thing that stands out to me when I look at the comparison of stats between these goalkeepers is that Sanchez has given up essentially 3 penalties. Like, I think that's the biggest difference. Our defense in the beginning was erratic. We were trying to get people settled. We were trying to learn. The defense that Petrovic has come into is far more settled, but I will give credit where it's due. You have to think that he has something to do with that. For whatever reason, he's settled in with the back line better. They're on the same page. But, he came in and settled immediately. If you look at these results, he came in at the end of the Everton match, we were losing 2-0, immediately turned around with wins, right? We've only lost twice under Petrovic, and I with him in goal, right? And there's a lot of context to that, but he didn't have howlers. He didn't get rattled. He hasn't had one game where he had to just shrug it off, Nick, to your point. And that's why I went to McLockbot, which huge fan of this for my player radars, and I compared him to Alisson, Nick Pope, Onana, and Vicario just to see where he stands. And he covers himself in glory. The only thing that he doesn't have here are as many matches as the rest of these guys. He only has 457 minutes. Onana's got 2,400, right? Nick Pope, 17. Alisson, 17, because he had his injury. Vicario, 1,890. So other than that, I mean, he's closest to Nick Pope. Otherwise, Onana is actually embarrassing, Nick. I can see it on the tip of your tongue.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's also this is a really fascinating chart because these goalkeepers are all very different stylistically
and
from each
teams. I thought that was very important too, because Liverpool are very specific in how they play.
So it's not a huge shock that Alisson has a higher percentage of long-range completed passes, right? That's what they do. They are technical in that way. It's not a massive shock that Pope, has a huge amount more thrown passes, right? Getting the ball out to the wings, someone like Trippier or whatever. Onana is super embarrassing. There's no doubt about that, and we should all laugh at United. But it's you look at Vicario, everyone's darling of the Premier League this year, and the way that the chart looks, it's just a bunch of Petrovic outside of a little bit of shot stopping based on more sample size and a little bit more save based on sample size and more thrown passes, which I don't really give a shit about. So I think it's a fascinating chart. Again, I want to see those numbers level out a little bit in terms of minutes and kind of where he is. But like in your chart that you've shared, a lot of red here to like, and I'm super pumped about that for him. Contrary to Dan's earlier point, I'm not 100% sure that he stays our goalkeeper when Sanchez is back. Talked about this before. I just don't know what Poch will do, but I like what I'm seeing so far. Dan?
I think that would be a real tough one. That would be a real tough one for me. And I know you don't lose your position to injury type thing, but
if you have no principles, Dan, when it's hard, you don't have principles. Sorry.
Yeah, you also have to go out to roll out and win every game, and whoever gives you the better opportunity to win is the guy who should be between the sticks. And right now, that guy is Petrovic.
Ooh, that's interesting. So, I love this. You fell right into my trap, Dan. So,
yes.
What you are saying is you think Dorde should play because he's the hot hand. Nick is saying, hey, you shouldn't lose your position if, just due to injury. This is also like, are you playing your backup keeper in the cup final who got you there, or do you put in Petrovic again to go win it?
Who's the backup in your
this
scenario?
Is also the question is we don't know.
Do both of them out there and just like pull a Kepa and like I'm not fucking leaving.
Gosh,
I'm not leaving.
I saw that again. Someone put that on the timeline, and I was like, oh my God, I didn't realize in the moment just how like
how insane it was.
Zola is out there like, what are we doing? Willie's just chilling. He doesn't care. He's like, all right, I'll go sit down.
Sarri almost quit mid-match.
Yes. 100%.
He almost walked out of the stadium.
And then the referee went up to Kepa. He's like, I'm not coming off. The referee's like, yeah, technically those are the rules. You don't have to come off. All right, hey, yeah, sit down. We're going to keep playing. Anyways, tangent. Last thing I want to put, again, is Petrovic doesn't have the volume of minutes yet, but his save percentage is at 75% right now. I took the top goalkeepers from FBref and compared as well. Alisson is at 77.8. Alfonso Areola of West Ham is 77.1. And then Nick Pope is at 73.6. So, again, as it stands, Petrovic is third in the Premier League for save percentage. There's a lot of, other ways to calculate their non-expected, I don't know. There's another chance that essentially says is how difficult are the shots are they facing? We can get into that later. But at least right now, just reacting to an MLS goalkeeper has rocked up to Chelsea, came on as a sub, and never looked back. Super impressive.
So it's 3 percentage points higher than Sanchez, to be fair. Now, I think Sanchez had a lot more minutes, so those numbers could fluctuate. But, Sanchez would be about middle of the pack with 72%. 75% gets you maybe a couple extra points here or there. I mean, it's a real quandary. There's no doubt about it. It's, in a perfect world, you don't lose your place to injury. I don't know if that's going to be the case for Poch. I don't know if the pressure to win is going to overcome a standard locker room procedure here, right? It very well could. I think broad point, though, is that Georgie is looking like a real smart buy for Chelsea. And in a world where Kepa's maybe not going to stay at Real Madrid, and you look at the other goalkeeper options that came through this summer and the many, 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 many millions that were spent on those goalkeepers, this could be one of the savvier moves that the front office has made.
Sounds like you read my Twitter thread, Nick. Appreciate you. Hit that retweet.
I'm not really a fan of your work, but great job.
I did. I put on Twitter essentially all the Premier League teams that changed goalkeepers and the fee, and then I went out to all of the goalkeepers and their fees as well. And look, there's some good business that's been done, to be fair, but for 14 million euros, convert that to whatever currency you want, it feels pretty good, right? And also, just a little side note, I was on Capology because I was talking to my buddy Cody, who played in the MLS. George was on I think it was $4 grand a week in the MLS. He's now on $30 grand a week at Chelsea. His career earnings were $250,000, and he's now making a couple million a year. So this has gone well for him, personally and professionally.
Oh, no, he'll play himself into, a salary bump and all that sort of stuff too. I mean, like the thing that we talk about with players is like everyone should be incentivized to win, because if you win, more happens, more salary, more opportunities, more commercial stuff, more trophies, all this sort of stuff. Like have there been some players that have balked everyone should be incentivized to win rule? Of course. There are plenty of players out there who are just nuts, who don't necessarily share a team ethos. But for, I would say, the average competitive professional, the only incentive is to win, because it makes everything better. No, first of all, no one wants to be a part of a losing environment. Second of all, I want to make more money. I want to advance in my career. I want to earn individual and team accolades. Like, it should be pretty clear. Like, I hate when people are like, well, that person just doesn't care. Maybe there are some instances where that's very, very, very obvious. Like someone's just jogging around and not really participating in the team, but more likely than not, they're just not having a great day at the office. So, right over.
All right. So the big picture here is that we've got a replay coming. All right. It's going to be on the 6th of February, Dan. So, hey, we got a little bit of time. The downside of that is we're probably going to have another match moved, which, we were planning on playing Wolves on the 4th, Palace on the 12th. So does Wolves get moved up? But that doesn't help because we play Liverpool on the Wednesday. It's a mess, right? I think we can all just land there. It
looks like Liverpool 31st, Wolves 4th, Villa 7th of February. So
yeah, the round of replays happens starting from the 6th. So I imagine it could be a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. So
my point is, these are big boy problems, and we want to be a big boy, so we gotta have to figure this out. Exactly. So off to Villa Park to try to advance. That's what's next for this team. Obviously 0-0, nothing to overcome. It's just going to be 90 minutes, winner takes all.
Yeah, I think the big challenge is actually Villa's home form compared to Chelsea's away form. So Villa in the league this season, 9 wins, 1 draw, no losses, 28 points. Chelsea's away form in the league, 4-1-5, 13 points. And Nick made this point earlier. We have not done well in winning against what I would consider the bigger sides. And that would be like we won 4-1 against Tottenham earlier in the season. That was a real fun match. And that was a lot. There was some good moments in that one. But we also lost 4-1 to Newcastle, and we lost to United 2-1, which absolutely should have been a win. And I still can't for the life of me figure out how we lost that one. But ultimately, that's if we're evolving as a team, if we are growing from where we were this season to where we want to be, this is a match that requires a little bit more, is going to require some magic, is going to require the bounce of the ball to go our way and maybe not Villa's way or another team's way on the day to win it. I mean, this is can you show progress, right? If we're tying back to this idea, Nick, of it being a project, of it being something that we want to show sustained growth this season, brick by brick, day by day, this is a match where you have to go in and win now, given the opportunity. And it would defy how Villa have been able to play at home this season. But boy, oh boy, it would be a really, really great result for Pochettino and the team.
Oh, yeah. I mean, again, sustaining momentum right now. That's where we're at, right? I want this team to go give Liverpool absolute hell midweek. Revenge tour against Wolves, which, I think we're more than capable of doing. They had their own issues today. Unfortunately, there was some violence in the stadium during their FA Cup game. And then revenge tour against Villa. I think you can make the huge argument that Chelsea were better than Villa for large stretches of this game. Chelsea dominated the ball. They dominated the chances. Villa at home are a whole different beast, obviously. So we're going to have to play a different game than we did at the Bridge. It's going to probably be a little bit more even on the ball. We're probably going to have to defend a little deeper, maybe not be so aggressive, but there's going to be chances to score. And Chelsea just need to take those chances. And so I'm excited to see how that comes to pass. What tactics Pochettino learned from this game, who's healthy, who's not, will probably determine it, right? And so, I back us to win that game. I really do. I don't think I've seen anything from Villa against us this year that says that they are unbeatable. I think we just have to take our chances.
Obviously, we're playing Liverpool in the League Cup final. So that's important. Any mental edge you can get, important. So from there, you look at all these things and it's just, what is the spine of this team? Are we going to be able to defend to the death? Because I hate to say it, Liverpool, even without Mohamed Salah, are still finding ways to score. Granted, it's Bournemouth, and now it's Norwich. But they put 4 past, I believe it was Newcastle. 4-2, right? The Arsenal was 1-1. Then they turned around and beat them 2-1 or 2-0 in the FA Cup. Like, Liverpool are first in the league for a reason, right? It is what it is. They're a good team. As much as everyone's trying to dismantle them and knock them off, they're finding a way to do it. Now it's the Klopp farewell tour. Like, my gosh,
Exactly.
we have to deal with. So
Hey guys, he's
we
not
have to
dead.
stamp that one out. We have to stamp that one out, though. Like, this is the Chelsea against the, saving the world of football type rant. Like,
Yeah.
the amount of, like, eulogization that is occurring over this moment, the amount of pedestal putting of Klopp above others at the moment, in a same period where Chelsea have won as many trophies as this Liverpool side. Yes, we have not been as maybe impressive in the league, but we have collected the same number of trophies that Klopp has over his tenure as Liverpool manager. It is ridiculously overblown, and it is absolutely annoying to no end. And the only thing that we can do is, over some 90-minute periods over the next couple of weeks, absolutely put a cigarette butt out in the fucking eye of this story. Like, I don't know what else we need to do, Nick. Like, we have to stop this.
Yeah, I mean, look, I understand he's a great coach and he's implemented a style and all this sort of stuff, but, like, he's not dead. He's just tired and doesn't want to do it anymore. Like, the wake that was had at Anfield today, I was like, really? It's fine, guys. Like, also save that to the end of the season when he's actually gonna leave, perhaps. I'm not telling you how to do your thing. But yeah, anyway, it would be spectacular if they were drained of all their energy heading into Wednesday. We get a couple more days to prepare for that one, and we come out and hit them in the mouth early. God, I would love that. It would be a lot of fun. If we get out of there with a draw or a win, momentum tour officially on. Like, this team wouldn't have lost in, since Middlesbrough. That obviously doesn't matter as much now because we clobbered them 6-2 on aggregate. Haven't lost in the league since Wolves. So, and that was December 24th. I don't know.
Different days.
Sounds like that stretch that we were hoping to get at some point this season to me.
All right. Well, the opponents in the next round, Leeds or Plymouth Argyle. This sounds like a setup.
Let's go, Plymouth.
Argyle?
Come on.
How convenient.
Yeah,
Okay.
really.
Not even hiding
Really?
it now.
We figured it out. We figured it out.
The long con here. Well done. Well done to everybody involved. So it'll be a home draw, though. So that's good for us, obviously. So we still need to get there, right? But, hey, stay at home. No day in the match and other results. Like, look, there's a bunch of 0-0s in this one. Bournemouth beating Swansea 5-0 stands out, but you're also like, Ipswich and Maidstone is the big one, where lower level beating championship side 2-1. Wild scenes there. Luton beating Everton at the end, right at the very end with the late goal. That was fun, at least for me, to watch. Other than that, Brighton beating Sheffield 5-2 doesn't really surprise me either. So I don't know if anything stood out to you, Nick, but it's just a lot of matches, a lot of random. Man City beating Tottenham off just like
There
the
you go.
shittiest
That
goal
was the
ever
one.
was fun. And turns out Man City had a terrible record at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium.
First win there.
Wild.
Can I just quickly say about the Maidstone result?
Yes.
2 shots in the entire game, 2 on target, 2 goals. Ipswich Town, 38 shots, 13 on target, 1 goal, and they're out of the cup.
The magic.
It's beautiful.
The magic
And
and
that
the
is-
madness of the
that
FA
is
Cup.
beautiful to read. It is so fucking funny. But good for Maidstone. Why not? And hopefully, they continue on, because I mean this is really like, for us in the States, this is really like the 15 seed beating the 2 seed in the tournament, in the NCAA tournament. It's March Madness. We're heading into that sort of vibe right now. I forget who they would. Do we know who they get next?
I don't know. I'm sure by the time this comes
man.
out, everyone's got it all played up. But yeah, they're probably
Yeah.
gonna have another championship team, if not Premier League team. Those are the rest of the teams in the field that are left. So
Oh man, I really hope they get someone
Sheffield
good.
Wednesday or Coventry is theirs.
Oh,
so
not
yes.
bad.
Blackburn or Wrexham versus Newcastle, Chelsea or Aston Villa versus Leeds or Plymouth. You have Bournemouth versus Leicester, Liverpool or Norwich, Liverpool versus Watford or Southampton, Bristol City or Nottingham Forest versus Newport or Manchester United, Wolves versus Brighton, and then Luton versus Man City. Sorry, Luton.
Yeah, we are confirmed on the 7th, Wednesday the 7th of February.
Fantastic.
Against Villa.
An extra day of rest, which we need. Well, look, that's the FA Cup. We're still in it. 0-0 against Villa. Not great at home. Had our chances. Petrovic really cementing himself as a top player. There's a lot of other things in there. Let us know what you made of this one. Much more content coming at you every single week. As you know, get involved in the Discord to find the best Chelsea community. All right, we're going to wrap there. It's been comprehensive. You love the magic. We just didn't get as much as we wanted, Dan. But next time, you promised way more magic, and I appreciate that.
Magic and madness. The FA Cup lives on.
Chaos and trophies, you know it. But until next time, Chelsea fans, you know what to do. Keep the blue flag flying high.